Major draft strategy alert from the head honchos at ESPN, Falcons fans. Welcome into Falcons Today by Chat Sports. My name is Moose. According to Jordan Reid and Matt Miller, two draft analysts at ESPN, all 32 teams have dropped a little bit of buzz to these two guys about what the plans are, at least right now, for the 2026 NFL Draft. And Jordan Reid spoke mostly about the Dirty Birds and where their heads are at surrounding their thoughts on their early picks in this upcoming draft. It's a huge report on what Atlanta wants, by the way. Now, it is a, comprehensive all 32 teams, but they did list the Atlanta Falcons and specifically a player that they seem to be targeting, or at least that's what reports are indicating from their inside sources. So, before we break down exactly what the article says, I got to remind you guys that we are going live for the NFL Draft all 3 days. So if you want to join us for all 3 days of live coverage, join by hitting that subscribe button. The boss has told me we need to hit 53,000 before the draft begins. So if you want to be a part of that special 3 nights, do me a favor, be one of the 391 that we need to get us up to 53,000 and hit that subscribe button today. So let's go over the basic spark notes of this article. What does it say? What are they talking about? What do you need to know? All 32 teams had draft intel leaked about where their draft strategies lie right now. Matt Miller and Jordan Reid were the co-authors of this, and they both agree unanimously that the Falcons want both a defensive tackle and a wide receiver. And the name that keeps popping up, according to inside the building sources, is Bryce Lance from the University of North Dakota State. But to give you the full context of the article, here's the exact quote so you know that I'm not missing anything. In speaking to league sources connected to Atlanta, one position that has been heavily linked to the Falcons is defensive tackle. They have done an extensive amount of work there, but another position that routinely popped up into conversation was wide receiver. Even after adding Jahan Dotson and Olamide Zaccheaus this offseason, the Falcons want a field stretcher at some point on day 2. Bryce Lance from North Dakota State was a name that kept coming up. Do not be surprised if the Falcons find a way to trade down or even trade a player for more picks. New general manager Ian Cunningham has been very clear about his affinity for more selections. Whoa, tons of stuff in that article, right? That quote is just chock full of information and more videos to come surrounding this article, but let's just break down exactly what we know. According to this article, it looks like the Falcons are interested in trading down in the draft or potentially trading away a player to get more draft picks. We kind of knew that to begin with. Atlanta apparently wants to get a defensive tackle. We'll touch on that in this episode as well. And then, of course, we're going to touch on Bryce Lance and apparently the Falcons being connected to Lance. So let's start with the most obvious one, trading down. This was something that we've kind of been talking about for a while. It's been widely reported and said by Ian Cunningham himself. We're working on manufacturing more picks. It is clear they want to get more than 5 draft picks. I think that's pretty much obvious at this point. So it should be a pretty much guarantee that they're going to be trying to trade down. I have asked you guys multiple times where you think we end up with. Most people say between 7 and 8 picks. But as of right now, we've got 48, 79, 122, 215, and 231. They're going to keep this pick, in my opinion, number 48. I think you'll see a manufacturing of 79 through 122. I could expect a lot more in this area. Probably going to try to get a 5th rounder as well, considering we don't have one. Thanks, Kirk. But these 3 rounds, 3, 4, and 5, is where I expect the bulk of the picks to come from, and I think we end up with 8 picks. I've now done, a little bit more extensive research. I've thought about it, and I think, 7 to 8, but most likely 8. So I believe that we're going to end up getting 3 more draft picks by the time everything is all said and done after day 3 of the NFL draft. So let's move on to the big elephant in the room, right? The new information, and that's Bryce Lance. And funny enough, I actually met Bryce Lance and Trey Lance when they were at North Dakota State. I used to live in Fargo, North Dakota, when I was doing radio out there. and I actually got to shake hands with Bryce Lance when he was in high school. And this was right around the time that Trey was getting drafted by the San Francisco 49ers. But I digress. Let's talk a little bit about who Bryce Lance is as a player. He's a true breakaway, down-the-field threat, explosive long speed when he can get in his stride. 21.2 yards per catch his last season at NDSU. Productive on kick returns and punt coverages, so he can also be a special teams player, and he's got incredible tracking on the deep ball, so that's his bread and butter. He's going to be a stretch-the-field player. You can pretty much bet from day one he's going to be asked to go routes all the time. Now, I don't want to just gas up a player without bringing up some of their weaknesses. One of the things that I think he lacks right now is that separation quickness at the next level, and that's going to be something that's going to be tested for him specifically. That's going to be a task of this Kevin Stefanski offense if they draft him to try to create a little bit more separation, because while he can do it, that straight line speed is definitely a strength of his. You want to know that that route tree can be developed a little bit further. The other thing that is also pretty obvious is that he's had no real FBS competition. He plays in, FCS at North Dakota State, and it's like Division 2A or whatever it is. So they don't play the most elite talent, and he doesn't have that much tackle breaking ability. So if he gets hit, he's pretty much going down immediately. But let's go back to his last 2 seasons at NDSU. I think this is pretty amazing. For a team that doesn't necessarily throw the ball a whole lot and plays, weaker competition, 2 back-to-back seasons over 1,000 yards, 17 touchdowns in 2024 compared to the 8 in 2025, but his yards per reception were way higher in 2025 than in 2024. I would actually like to see it a little bit closer to like 15 or 16 if it meant getting closer to 75 receptions his next year. His advanced analytics, by the way, go even further. 3.8% drop rate, 3.5 yards per route run in 2025. A incredible relative athletic score. His RAS score was off the charts, and a 73.9 completion rate, when targeted this last season. So when the ball comes his way, it's usually because he's open downfield and he's catching it. Doesn't drop the ball. He's got some pretty sure hands. I know that I have made a video about Zaccheaus Branch, and I still think Branch is my number 1 choice over a guy like Lance, but both of these players are projected right now as either late seconds or third-round picks. So I'll bet you any money the numbers or the conversation right now between these two are as, who do we want? Do you want someone that plays more at the line of scrimmage, or do you want someone that can stretch the field? And it's just going to be up to Ian Cunningham and Matt Ryan to decide which player fits what they want to do more. If you were going by the quarterback play, it would be Zaccheaus Branch. So that's why I'm typing my ZB. That's why I'm saying I want Branch, because Tua doesn't have a great arm. Penix is not incredibly accurate. Both of those things translate to we need someone who plays more at the line of scrimmage. But Bryce Lance would not be a bad pick either. So you let me know down in the comment section down below which player you are rolling with. All right, before we continue on about the DTs, and there's a couple of guys that I want to briefly bring up in this episode, I got to tell you about my friends over at Factor, because mentioning the sponsors keeps the lights on here at Chat Sports. When hunger strikes and you're exhausted, there's something healthy in your fridge or pantry that you should be making, but you just don't have it in you. For me, healthy eating is not a willpower problem. It's a setup problem. That is, until I found Factor. Factor meals have built around your goals, whether that's weight loss, overall nutrition, more protein, or GLP-1 support for strength and workout recovery. Check out Factor's Muscle Pro collection. It's ready in 2 minutes. Factor shops, preps, cooks, and delivers straight to your door, so you have more time for everything you love this upcoming spring. Head to factormeals.com/FalconsChat50off and use code FalconsChat50off to get 50% off and free daily greens per box with new subscription only while supplies last until 9/27/2026. See website for more details. So the second part of that huge article that we read was that Atlanta is also very heavily interested in a defensive tackle. Now, I personally believe, based off of the fact that not only was it mentioned first in the article, but everything that we know about what the Falcons were last year on defense, they need to stop the run better. So I think a high priority position of need is defensive tackle, and this feels like their round 2 pick to me. Because when you think about it, when you draft a defensive tackle in round 4, 5, 6, a day 3 pick, it's usually as a rotational player, not someone that's going to start. You could get a legitimate starter day 1 or day 2 in this case for the Falcons, but a starter on day 2 based off of the round 2 picks. So who are some of the players that we unanimously believe are going to go in round 2 as a defensive tackle? Christian Miller from Georgia, Lee Hunter from Texas Tech, Dominique Orange from Iowa State, who has tested very well and everybody's very high on him, and Caleb Banks from Florida, who's a round 1 talent, but that foot injury has not been kind to his testing ability, so he's dropped a little bit to round 2, maybe even round 3. So I don't necessarily know that I'm in on Caleb Banks because of that injury, but let's talk a little bit about some of the guys that I think could be on the radar for sure for Atlanta. Christian Miller, we've talked a little bit about him on the channel as well. Hard-nosed run defender with with great leverage. That's his style of play. He's a leverage player. An active pursuit player as well who can close those gaps, got great gap integrity, can squeeze those run lanes really well. Not as active as a pass rusher, but that's not what the Falcons need. So I'm not necessarily asking him to get after the quarterback. And his stats prove that, right? 1.5 sacks last year. Did get 16 pressures, which is actually pretty decent. 4 tackles for loss, but a space eater, somebody that can fill up a hole, can stop the run, somebody that can be that gap integrity player in this Jeff Ulbrich defense. That's what we're looking for. And he's a player that's only had 4 sacks over his, entire career. And we don't need somebody that can get a lot of sacks. That's not what we're looking for. Now, the player that is most comped to Christian Miller, and it's a player that I actually like a lot, is Mazi Smith. And that's a pretty decent comp for Christian Miller and what he can most likely be, referenced to in the NFL. And their side-by-side profiles are almost exactly the same. Smith is actually an inch shorter than Miller, but both are sitting right around 323 to 321, so 320-ish. Their prospect grade is literally the exact same. And Mazi Smith was actually a first-round pick. They both play a leverage style of defensive tackle, so you can pretty much bet that you're getting a Mazi Smith if you drafted him, which is an okay pick, in my opinion. An anonymous scout also said that Christian Miller is a solid and tough player that is at a valuable position, so he probably goes a little earlier than you think. So maybe this is an early second-round pick. And if he's not there, if Miller is not available, then I also think Lee Hunter could be a name that we explore heavily for that pick 48. 6'4", 325 pounds from Mobile, Alabama. The number 5 defensive tackle on Brugler's The Beast board. So who is Lee Hunter? Well, he is one of the anchors of that Texas Tech defensive line, moves with surprising quickness for his 320-pound frame, uses fierce hands, and is a very coachable player, wants to be coached hard. I mean, he's just a massive human being. Same thing, though, lacks that pass rush plan and relies on force to push his way through the pocket, but also a player that can stop the run a little bit better, in my opinion, than Christian Miller can. 10.5 tackles for loss last year. 41 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 26 pressures, and a forced fumble. Plays with a lot of tenacity. I like Lee Hunter's skill set a lot. But if you were to ask me right now, I don't have my sights set on a very specific defensive tackle. I'd be okay with 3 players. Christian Miller, Lee Hunter, Dominique Orange. I think all 3 of these guys present a space eater mentality. They plug up a hole, and they just anchor that defensive line, which is exactly what we were missing last year. Any one of these players, you could move inside technically to nose tackle if you wanted to, and it would be just fine. So I'm okay with either one of these 3. But if you had to name your favorite defensive tackle in this draft class, who would it be? let me know down in the comment section down below. And a quick little reminder, we're going live for the draft all 3 days. So do me a favor, hit that sub button today. It's free. It will never cost you a thing here on the channel to get daily videos surrounding your Dirty Birds. That's all I got for you, Falcons fans. I'll be back a little bit later on today with more intel surrounding the Falcons. As always, rise up and be cool.